It wasn't the launch that shook the galaxy. It was the silence that followed. For 3 weeks, Earth broadcast nothing. No telemetry, no recovery logs, no triumphant press conference. Just dead air after the test ship Odyssey punched through the edge of light speed and vanished into deep space. Every observatory and listening post, from the Martian cradle to the Varan spiral, went on edge. Then it came back. Odyssey didn't return from the direction it had launched. It reappeared 20 light-years away from Earth, just outside the neutral zone of the Council's most sacred territory, a place even the war-hardened Ilari dared not fly near without 10 levels of clearance. No one had ever jumped like that. Not through folded space, not without ripping holes into subspace and burning half their crew in transit. No species had ever dared to make a jump that wide, that dirty, that unstable. But humans had. And somehow the ship came back without a scratch. No radiation burns, no hull deformation, not even a heat signature that matched the Council's models. It was like the ship had ignored the very laws the galaxy had spent centuries respecting. 3 hours after Odyssey's sudden reappearance, the Interstellar Council convened an emergency session. And that meant only one thing. Humanity had scared the hell out of them. Inside the council chamber, a massive glass-domed arena orbiting above the twin stars of Trelvanus, every representative from the major races sat in tight rows of tension. The Traskian diplomat blinked his 4 eyes in sync, his tendrils curling around his data slate as he reviewed the incident logs. The Valtari high speaker hissed something obscene in her own tongue and slammed a bony fist on the table. The room pulsed with fear. "They jumped through the fade," one of the elder Karaul barked. "They bent quantum gravity with brute force. They didn't calculate slipstream harmonics, they forced it open." "They created a tear in subspace the size of a moon," the Sarnathi chancellor added. "A moon, damn you. If that had collapsed—" "It didn't," came a quiet, gravel-deep voice from the far end of the chamber. Everyone turned. The human representative, Commander Reeve, stood with arms folded behind his back, his face unreadable, battle-scarred, unshaved, eyes dark as vacuum. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't here to beg. He was a veteran, and he spoke like one. "We tested the drive," Reeve said, stepping forward. "It worked. We made the jump. No casualties, no damage, no loss of control. The Odyssey performed exactly as designed." "That's not the point," someone snarled. Reeve ignored him. "Humanity is done waiting for permission," he continued. "For centuries, we've been held back by regulations you all agreed to, while Earth was still bleeding from its own wars. We crawled our way into the stars, earned every inch with fire and grit. And now that we've found a way to leap forward, you want to put us back in the cage." "No," the Valtari whispered. "We want to prevent genocide." Reeve's eyes flickered, just slightly. "Is that what you think this is? A weapon?" "You jumped past defenses, past treaties, past warning zones. You broke the limit for safe transit and left a warp echo so strong it collapsed 4 satellites in the Pelion sector." "That wasn't our fault," Reeve said calmly. "Your satellites were built on assumptions. Ours weren't." And there it was, the quiet threat behind the words, the unsettling calm that only a man who's seen death up close could wear so easily. This wasn't just scientific advancement. This was power. Raw, uncontrolled, undeniable power that made the rest of the galaxy realize something terrifying. Humans weren't just catching up anymore. They were breaking rules no one dared to question. They were building things that weren't supposed to work, and they were doing it without asking anyone's permission. That terrified them more than war. Back on Earth, deep in a hidden installation buried beneath the Greenland ice sheets, Dr. Lennox, the man who designed the FTL core, stood alone in front of the engine he'd spent 14 years building. The hum of it was constant now, like it was alive. He knew the council would threaten sanctions, maybe even war, but he didn't care. He didn't build the drive for them. He built it for the men who died believing Earth would never reach the stars. He built it for the boy who watched his father burn in an old Earth shuttle crash because Earth tech was too slow, too late, too outdated to matter. He built it because humanity had been underestimated too many times. And now? Now it was their turn to be afraid. Commander Reeve had barely stepped off the council dais before the private messages started lighting up on his neural interface. Warnings, veiled threats, urgent calls from Earth's political backers. Every species with a stake in power now wanted answers, and none of them trusted the ones they'd just heard. He ignored every one of them. Instead, he activated the secure line back to Earth. "Get me Lennox," he said. There was a pause, a quiet blip. Then a voice crackled through the implant. "Already listening," came Lennox's voice. Calm, flat, the way only a man with no time for posturing could sound. "You saw their reaction?" Reeve asked. "I heard it before you even walked in the room," Lennox replied. "The whole relay grid is tapped. I wanted to see if they'd panic." "They did. And worse, they think it's a weapon." There was a silence on the other end. Then Lennox laughed, low and bitter. "That's because it is, Reeve, just not in the way they understand." Reeve's jaw tightened as he moved into the docking corridor. Alien guards eyed him with thinly veiled suspicion. One even reached for a scanner as he passed, only to stop when Reeve stared him down. "Explain," Reeve said through gritted teeth. "You already know. You've flown more missions than any of those diplomats have seen planets," Lennox said. "You know how war starts. You know what scares people. And right now, that engine scares them more than any fleet we've ever built." Reeve didn't answer. He didn't have to, because Lennox was right. The FTL-9 wasn't just faster. It wasn't just efficient. It changed everything. With one jump, Earth had rendered centuries of interstellar borders meaningless. Space, for most races, was still slow, dangerous, limited by what the Council called stabilized slip lanes, routes so overregulated and tightly patrolled that most systems functioned more like gated communities than open space. But the FTL-9 didn't care about lanes, or politics, or authority. It just punched a hole through reality and arrived wherever it wanted. And that was a problem no treaty could fix. Back on Earth, Lennox leaned over the humming core of the test engine, his eyes bloodshot and sunken from days without sleep. But his mind? Razor sharp. Every variable, every recalibration, every microscopic reaction of the quantum coils burned into his brain. The engine wasn't just a project anymore. It was a part of him. He'd grown up in what used to be Chicago, back before the city was flooded by war refugees and government relocations. His mother died in one of the ration riots. His father died in orbit, burned alive in a commercial shuttle because the safety protocols failed during re-entry. Lennox was 12. No one came to explain it to him. No one paid for the death. The company issued a one-line apology and moved on. That was the first time he understood what power really meant. And the second? When the Council denied Earth's bid for priority science funding, called them reckless, immature, still emotionally unstable as a species. That rejection killed 20 research labs. It killed jobs, dreams, hope. But it lit a fire under the right people, people like him. So when the government finally gave up on diplomacy and turned to private black budget programs, Lennox was ready. He took the ashes of every failed propulsion system humanity ever built and forged something new, something dangerous, something unignorable. He didn't want applause. He wanted respect. And if not that, fear would do. Above the planet Argarian 6, Deep inside a cloaked research station belonging to the Rulkar Dominion, several senior intelligence officers reviewed the jump data collected during the Odyssey's return. The results didn't make sense. "There's no decay signature," one of the officers muttered. "No neutrino scatter, no bleed-off," another added. "It's like the ship bypassed subspace entirely." "Impossible," grunted the Admiral. "Then explain this," the analyst snapped, projecting a video across the room. The ship didn't just appear. It materialized. Like a shadow being filled in by light, it pulsed into view with a soft distortion ripple, untouched, unscratched, like it had never even moved through hostile physics. "That's not a jump," someone whispered. "That's rewriting location." Which meant humanity had figured out how to move, not through space, but around it, folding the map, burning the gaps. "We're not just behind," the Admiral said, sitting down hard. "We're obsolete." Reeve sat in the Mistral, his personal long-range dropship, staring out into deep space as the ship left Council airspace. His thoughts weren't on politics anymore. They were on war. Because that was what was coming, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even this year. But the second humanity refused to dismantle the FTL project, the countdown would begin. He'd seen it before, in border conflicts and failed colonies. The fear of imbalance. The lie of peace keeping everyone comfortable until someone proved they couldn't be contained anymore. And humanity had just proven it, loud and clear. He'd read the reports from Earth's Defense Command. Half the fleets were already running drills under blackout conditions. Civilian transports were being retrofitted with stealth plating. Underground bunkers were quietly being expanded beneath Mars and Europa. Not because Earth wanted war, but because Earth knew it was coming. They didn't want to be ready. They had to be. Reeve closed his eyes for a moment and let the hum of the ship settle into his chest. It reminded him of the old carrier ships he served on. The ones where you counted sleep in stolen minutes and dreams in the number of friends who made it back. He never thought he'd live long enough to see Earth stop crawling. But now they were flying, and it was only a matter of time before someone tried to shoot them down. The emergency council session spilled into chaos after Reeve left. Some races called for sanctions, others demanded a blockade around Earth. A few, like the Varnai, whispered about first strikes. But no one said it openly. No one wanted to be the one to light the match. Until a single voice broke through the noise. "They won't stop," the high speaker of the Valtari hissed, her voice ice over broken glass. "They never do. Humans are born defiant. It is in their bones. They seek dominance through invention. They weaponize necessity. They do not ask permission. They take." She paused, letting her words simmer in the silent air. "They will jump again. And next time, they will jump into territory we are not prepared to defend." A ripple of unease spread across the chamber. And in that moment, the council understood. The question was no longer if humans would jump again. It was where. Lennox watched the countdown initiate for the next jump test. This one completely off the books. No council oversight, no safety protocols, just raw distance. 50 light years, straight through the densest, unregulated sector in local space. "Is this wise?" his assistant asked quietly, standing just behind him. "No," Lennox said. "It's necessary." He tapped the final key. The test ship, Vanguard, vanished with a flash so small it barely lit the chamber, and 32 seconds later, it pinged back from its destination. Clean? Whole. On target. Lennox let out a long breath, part awe, part exhaustion. "Tell Reeve," he said quietly. "It works, it's stable, and it's faster than anything alive." The assistant nodded, pale. "You think the council will try something soon?" Lennox's face darkened. "They already are. But it won't matter. He turned toward the engine again. They waited too long. We're already gone. It started with a quiet transmission. No fanfare, no warning. Just a single encrypted burst that reached the outer perimeter of Earth's military listening post on Titan. Unknown origin. Priority code Red Intercepted Council Order. Disable Project FTL-9 by any means necessary. Covert action authorized. Biological termination permitted. Lieutenant Harris stared at the message on the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't a soldier. Not really. He'd signed up to run sensor arrays and scan deep space chatter, not to read kill orders from the most powerful interstellar coalition in existence. He didn't even move at first, just sat there, eyes fixed on the words, wondering if this was some cruel prank or a system error. It wasn't. The encryption headers matched. The traceback confirmed it. The Council had greenlit an assassination. They were coming for Lennox. On Earth, Lennox had no idea. He was deep inside the subterranean complex, watching the final stress tests on the Vanguard's FTL core. It was performing better than any model predicted. Stabilization latency dropped to near zero. Spatial distortion remained consistent. The ship could jump again, and again, without losing structural integrity. But that wasn't what mattered to him anymore. It was what the core could become. The current version was just the beginning. Lennox had already begun work on a prototype that could carry not one ship, but entire fleets. A system-wide anchor node that could drag a battle group across the stars like a hook through fabric. It was madness, impossible, but so was everything else until humans did it first. He leaned forward, making tiny adjustments to the simulation algorithms when his second-in-command, Major Deke, entered the chamber. The man looked tense. "You haven't eaten," Deke said. "I'm not hungry." "You haven't slept." "I'm not tired." Deke paused, eyes scanning the equipment. "They're going to come for this." "I know," Lennox said without looking up. "You don't know," Deke insisted, voice low now. "We intercepted chatter from Council intelligence. They've greenlit Black Ops inside Terran space. No negotiations, no ultimatums. They're skipping straight to knives in the dark." That made Lennox look up. "You're sure?" "As sure as a bullet in the head." Lennox turned away and slowly powered down the console. "Then we accelerate the timeline." "For the next jump?" "For the weaponization." Deke's jaw clenched. "We said we wouldn't do that unless they forced our hand. They just did." Commander Reeve was en route back to Earth aboard the Mistral, but halfway through the flight, he rerouted to a secure orbital relay station above Europa. The reason? One name. Agent Calden. Reeve hadn't heard the name in years, not since his last Black File mission in the Outer Belt. Calden was one of the old breed, deep ops, zero identity, known to only a handful of military insiders. If Calden was reaching out, it meant something was coming through the cracks. Reeve stepped into the frozen debrief chamber and activated the secure link. Calden's voice came through distorted and gravel rough. "You've got a council mole in the FTL program." Reeve didn't blink. "Who?" "Don't know yet, but he's feeding target coordinates back to the Varnai consulate. The Vanguard's next jump was scheduled for Sector 19 Alpha Delta, correct?" Reeve froze. "That sector's classified. Only Lennox, Deke, and I know that." "Well, now the Council knows it too. I traced a covert ping from Terran Orbital Satellite 04 Beta. Someone's leaking launch windows." Reeve clenched his fists. "Why tell me?" "Because if the mole succeeds, it won't just be a setback. They're planning to use it as justification for a preventive strike. You lose Vanguard, they hit the FTL complex within a week." And Earth can't win a first strike scenario, Reeve muttered. Not yet. Then we make sure that jump happens clean. And the mole? Reeve's face hardened. Leave that to me. On the moon, Europa, buried beneath 10 kilometers of ice and tech, the FTL ops team ran final diagnostics on Vanguard. The launch was scheduled in less than 6 hours. Security had been tripled, access logs were scrubbed. But paranoia still hung thick in the air. Deke personally oversaw every fuel core transfer, every coolant check, every subspace relay calibration. He didn't trust anyone else now, not even his senior techs. Too much was at stake. Lennox remained silent, moving between control rooms like a ghost. Every step echoed like a countdown. They didn't talk about the kill order. They didn't talk about betrayal. But everyone felt it, like a shadow that kept moving just out of reach. Then, just after midnight, UTC, Reeve arrived. No announcement, no escort, just him in full field gear, his sidearms slung low, his face locked in that expression of cold certainty. You trust your people? He asked Deke. I used to. Then it's not enough. They swept the base manually, Reeve taking the deepest labs while Deke cleared the engineering floors. It wasn't until they reached the AI server bay that they found it. A hidden transmitter buried beneath a cooling conduit, masked under a dummy maintenance protocol. Shut it down, Reeve barked. A tech tried, but the signal spiked. Too late. The beacon pulsed once, then died. Varney strike cruisers had the coordinates. 23 minutes later, Reeve stood in the operations center, arms crossed, watching the jump clock count down. You still want to launch? Deke asked. We have to, Reeve said. If we delay, we lose. The second we blink, they move. This isn't about testing anymore. This is about message. And if they shoot us out of the sky? Then we fire back. Lennox stepped forward then, setting down a data pad. They won't. Reeve turned. You sound confident. Because I'm done hiding, Lennox said. I've installed a secondary core inside Vanguard. Not just for power. This one records jump data at quantum resolution, meaning when this ship jumps, we'll have proof. Not theory, not math. Reality. We'll be able to show the universe that we've mastered something they still call impossible. Reeve looked at him. You know they'll never believe us. I don't care, Lennox said. They'll still know. That's enough. The launch was silent. No press, no celebration, just a dozen people inside a concrete room watching history unfold. The Vanguard lifted with a whisper of power, then vanished. 10 seconds. 20. 42. Jump successful, the Control AI confirmed. Telemetry received, location verified, all systems nominal. A breath released across the room. They'd done it again. But before the relief could settle, the warning sirens began to scream. Multiple warp signatures incoming, someone shouted. 3 Varney cruisers, closing fast. Reeve's voice boomed. Sound lockdown. Initiate blackout protocol. Get the fleet on comms. Deke ran to the console. We've got 30 seconds before they're in range. Then Lennox spoke. Calm, cold. Number, let them come. Reeve spun. What the hell are you talking about? Lennox's eyes gleamed with something more than pride. They want to stop progress with fear. Let them see what we've built instead. Reeve's mouth opened, but before he could argue, the projection on the main screen shifted. The Varney cruisers dropped out of warp and stopped. Just froze there, like statues in space. Seconds passed. No weapons fired. No advance. What the hell? Deke whispered. Look, Lennox said, pointing at the screen. The Vanguard was behind them. It had jumped again, without warning, straight into their backs. And it wasn't alone. From the depths of space, 2 more ships blinked into existence, smaller crafts equipped with early-stage FTL cores. Not warships, not threats, but proof. Humanity had done it. They had fleet capability now, and every species watching knew the same thing in that moment. Earth wasn't the underdog anymore. The Varnai cruisers hovered in space like frozen predators, caught off guard by prey that had evolved faster than anyone thought possible. Their guns stayed cold, their engines humming low, but no one in the Terran command room mistook that stillness for peace. They weren't retreating, they were recalculating. Reeve paced the operations floor, eyes locked on the real-time feed. The Vanguard and its 2 companion ships floated just beyond the cruiser's perimeter, taunting them with quiet dominance. It was a move no alien force expected from humans, coordinated, precise, and unafraid. "They didn't fire," Deke muttered, half in disbelief. "They couldn't," Reeve replied. "They were caught with their pants down. You make a move like that, you damn well better be sure you're the biggest monster in the water." Lennox stood behind them, his arms crossed as he watched the cruisers drift like wounded wolves. "Now they know we're not prey." "Still doesn't mean they won't come back with a bigger pack," Reeve said. "Oh, they will," Lennox replied. "But by then, we'll have something bigger waiting." Deke looked over. "How much bigger?" Lennox didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth was, the next phase of the project, the one only a handful of people on Earth even knew about, was already being constructed under the South Pacific, in a black zone facility so buried and isolated that even orbital scans would only show rock and water. It wasn't just a ship. It was a weapon. Or at least it could be, because the new core didn't just allow jumps. It could pull. 3 days later, the Interstellar Council convened once again, this time not in Trelvanus, but on neutral ground orbiting the decaying star Enkesh, a place chosen for one reason. It had no planetary system, no trade lanes, and no strategic value. Meaning if things went south, no one would miss it. Reeve walked into the chamber alone, again. No advisors, no military escort. Just the worn boots of a Terran commander and the eyes of a man who had buried more soldiers than he could count. The council speaker, an elongated creature of the Morai caste, addressed the room with ceremonial stiffness. "Commander Reeve of the Terran Assembly, you are summoned to account for the recent FTL breaches and the unauthorized demonstration of force in Sector Epsilon Tau." Reeve didn't even flinch. "Unauthorized by who?" "The Council," the speaker replied curtly. "You mean the same council that denied us warp tech for 100 years while selling it to the Varney, the Illyri, and the Catharn? The same council that blocked our science grants because humans were too aggressive for peaceful advancement?" Murmurs broke out. The Valtari delegate hissed something guttural under her breath. Reeve's voice dropped. "Don't lecture me on authorization. We've played by your rules long enough." "You destabilized subspace lanes," snapped the Traskian diplomat. "You violated the Enkale Accord, and you placed council territories at risk with your experimental drive." "We didn't put anyone at risk. You just realized your control isn't absolute anymore." The chamber fell silent. That was the moment. Right there. The moment everyone realized the old game had ended. The illusion of control, the hierarchy of technology, the slow crawl of diplomacy. It was all shattered. And Reeve stood in the middle of it, unapologetic. "What do you want from us?" he said finally. "You want us to stop exploring? To stop inventing? To kneel because we did something you couldn't?" The council speaker's voice softened. "We want stability, Commander." Reeve laughed once, dry. "Number, you want power, and the fact that we now have it scares the hell out of you." The Valtari delegate stood suddenly. Then let it be war. The chamber erupted. No! Silence her! She speaks truth. Humans must be contained. But the speaker raised his hand. Sit down, all of you. The Valtari glared but obeyed, folding herself back into her seat like a predator waiting for the next opening. Commander Reeve, the speaker said, this is your final warning. Disable the FTL program, dismantle the Vanguard, and return to regulated warp research, or face isolation. No trade, no defense pacts, no access to council-protected corridors. Reeve stepped forward. Slowly. Do it, he said. Gasps followed. We've been isolated before. We survived then. We'll survive now. But if one more spy touches Terran soil, if one more ship crosses into our space without a beacon, if one more operative tries to kill my people, he paused, letting the words hang like a guillotine. We won't respond with sanctions. We'll respond with FTL warheads dropped into your oceans before you can even blink. The silence that followed was complete. Then Reeve turned and walked out. Back on Earth, the Council's message reached the Terran High Command within minutes. You are exiled. All alliances terminated. Any further technological advancement will be treated as hostile. It was official. Humanity was alone, and no one was mourning it. Inside the mountain base where the next generation core, codenamed Godhook, was being assembled, Lennox stood before a live schematic of the device. The prototype wasn't elegant, it wasn't sleek, but it was terrifying in what it could do. Because Godhook wasn't about speed anymore, it was about control. With this core, Earth's fleet could not only jump, they could reach into subspace and intercept enemy jumps in real time. In theory, they could pull ships out of jump corridors, forcing them to rematerialize violently mid-transit. No species had ever created artificial subspace gravity fields strong enough to do that. No species would have dared. But humans were done asking for permission. Major Deke stared at the schematic in disbelief. This thing, it could shred a battleship in mid-jump. Yes, Lennox replied. You planning to tell Reeve? Lennox paused. Only if we build it. You are building it. Lennox nodded once. Then yes. The betrayal came 2 days later. The mole, buried deep inside Earth's own intelligence apparatus, transmitted the Godhook schematic to an anonymous council relay beacon hidden in the asteroid ring near Pluto. They thought it went unnoticed. But it didn't. Because Calden was still watching. He intercepted the packet mid-burst, traced the leak, and activated a red flag that hit Reeve's HUD just as he was touring the FTL launch compound on Phobos. One name flashed on the screen: Director Miles Halvern. Reeve froze. Halvern had been his mentor, his superior, a man who stood beside him during the orbital rebellions, who signed off on the first FTL field tests, who vouched for Lennox when no one else would. Reeve's stomach turned. He didn't hesitate. Within the hour, Halvern was in chains. The interrogation wasn't clean, it wasn't sanctioned, it wasn't even technically legal, but Reeve didn't care. You gave them the Godhook plans. Halvern said nothing. Why? Reeve demanded. They tried to kill Lennox. They threatened war. They want to turn Earth into another client race like the Qatari, and you gave them our only edge? Halvern's voice was hoarse. Because we're not ready. We've already done it. No, Halvern spat. You've poked the galaxy, but you haven't seen what happens when it hits back. You think the Varnai are the worst of it? They're nothing. They're tools. The Council has fleets hidden in black space, armories older than our species, AI-controlled extermination drones that make nukes look like toys. We're not fighting governments, Reeve. We're threatening the order of an empire that's existed for 10,000 years. Reeve's hands balled into fists. So your answer was to betray us? Halvern's eyes, bloodshot and shaking, met his. My answer was to buy us time. Reeve turned and walked out. He didn't say another word. That night, Reeve stood alone outside the Phobos hangar, watching the stars. No sound, no chatter, just the void and the subtle hum of ships waiting to launch. Lennox stepped beside him. "He say why?" he asked. Reeve nodded. "Fear. You believe him? I don't have the luxury." They stood there in silence, both of them looking at the dark beyond the dome. Lennox finally broke the silence. "Then we build it." Reeve looked over. "Godhook. We finish it. Not because we want war, but because we're already in one." Reeve took a long breath, the kind that came from a man who knew what war cost, and was willing to pay it again. "Then we make sure this one ends differently." It was 0400 UTC when the coded order was given. Not shouted, not announced, just transmitted through a hardened burst relay from Phobos to Earth's Black Fleet command node under the Indian Ocean Trench. The command was 4 words, buried in a stream of environmental telemetry. Execute Phase 1. Burn quiet. Fleet Command didn't need clarification. They'd been drilling for this moment since the day the Vanguard returned from its second jump. They already knew their role. Every jump corridor, every fail-safe, every contingency had been written, tested, and locked in place months ago. And now it was time to use it. The target wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a military installation. It was worse. It was a relay node, a deep space, unmanned, council-linked quantum sync satellite hidden near the ice-choked moon of Corvax Prime. One of the dozen key eyes of the Council's communication array. Destroying it wouldn't cripple them, but it would blind them just enough to miss the real play. Earth's Black Ops cruiser, Blackbird 1, launched from Europa's far side. It didn't fly out. It jumped out, skipping into folded subspace so fast the gravity detectors barely rippled. No one outside Earth even detected it. And less than 4 minutes later, it emerged 10,000 kilometers from the relay node. The warhead it carried was the first of its kind, the FTL Divergence Core. Built not to explode in conventional space, but inside jump space itself. When it detonated, space bent in on itself, just briefly, just enough. The node disappeared into a collapse field that turned its data sync array into ash. Gone. Vaporized. No alarms. No escape. One of the Council's best eyes had been plucked out. Quiet. Precise. And that was the warning. Earth had thrown its first punch. Back at Council Command, chaos broke out 6 hours later when the sync array didn't come back online. "What do you mean it's gone?" barked High Tactician Vess of the Varnai Dominion. "We mean it is not responding," the Sarnathi Communications Overseer said tightly. "Telemetry from Subnode 4G confirms the physical structure is no longer transmitting, either destroyed or removed." "Impossible," Vess hissed. "That node is shielded against plasma strikes and micro-jump stressors. No primitive fleet—" "It wasn't a fleet," another tech interrupted. "What?" The screen changed, showing trace data. Barely a whisper of energy. But the signature was unmistakable to those who knew how to read it. "It was an FTL-based implosion," the technician said. "The space-time layer itself folded in. They didn't shoot it. They deleted it." The council chamber fell into horrified silence. For centuries, weapons had evolved within limits, plasma-based, kinetic, nuclear, even experimental gravity hammers. But no race had ever dared tamper with folding physics as a method of destruction. It was seen as unstable, uncontainable. But humans, they didn't care. They'd built something that could collapse you without ever entering your airspace. Reeve stood in the war room on Earth, staring at the image of the missing node. The room was full of cold, efficient silence. No one clapped. No one smiled. Because this wasn't victory. It was declaration. "The second strike is ready," Deke reported, walking in with a fresh data slate. Targets the Qatari munitions depot near Groland's Reach, completely unmanned, but it's where they manufacture suppressor fields for the Council fleets. Reeve nodded once. Timing? Less than an hour. Lennox was already there, leaning on the edge of the command table. He hadn't slept in 48 hours. His clothes were wrinkled, and his hands were stained with diagnostic gel. But he looked alive. Electric. It works, he said flatly. We've already confirmed 3 successful FTL spike detonations inside controlled jump bubbles. We can now target objects while they're in transit. Reeve looked at him. You're telling me we can shoot them before they even arrive? No, Lennox said. I'm saying we can drag them out of jumps midway and detonate cores inside their fold space. It's like tearing someone out of a teleport and throwing them through a wall made of math. Deke whistled low. That's not just a weapon, he said. That's strategic annihilation. Lennox nodded. And we've only just started scaling it. The second strike didn't even make a sound. The Council wouldn't hear about it for 3 more hours, when one of their engineers tried to ping the Groland depot and got nothing but dead space. And by then, Earth had already launched a third strike, this time aimed directly at the Alari military refueling station above the moon, Cathor 2. But this time, the Council saw it. A deep space scout ship on a recon loop caught the faint signature of the Terran strike ship jumping in and vanishing just as quickly. Then, 10 seconds later, the station's central ring folded like paper and scattered into the void. That footage spread like wildfire. No press blackouts, no strategic denials. The universe watched Earth attack 3 targets in 12 hours with weapons no other race had ever dared dream of. And they didn't do it with fleets. They did it with precision, with cold intent. And for the first time in Council history, every major power called an emergency war council without a single vote of opposition. In the deepest part of Council space, where the old codes were stored and the long-shelved military doctrines lay buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, a single black file was opened. Project Stellar Hammer, a contingency plan from over 600 years ago, designed for use against existential, non-negotiable threats. The file listed only 3 conditions for activation. The adversary must possess unregulated space-folding capabilities. The adversary must demonstrate offensive subspace interference. The adversary must strike preemptively against Council defense infrastructure. Humanity had checked all 3 boxes, and so the Council made a decision it had hoped to avoid. They authorized the mobilization of the Eclipse Armada. Back on Earth, the intelligence filters picked it up instantly. Varnai warp barges, Sarnathi signal silos, Qatari dark matter harvesters, all of them moving, redirecting, aligning in formations too precise for trade or travel. They were coming. Deke stared at the screen, pale. They're moving fleets, Reeve nodded. I know. This is it, Lennox said. The moment they decide whether to end us or lose control of the galaxy. Reeve turned to him. Is Godhook ready? Lennox hesitated. No, he admitted. Not fully, but enough. Reeve didn't flinch. Then we use it. We only get one shot, Lennox warned. If they figure out how it works, they'll counter it. Maybe even collapse space lanes we need. Reeve leaned closer. Then we make it count. 12 hours later, Earth's message went out to every known channel in the galaxy. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a request. It was a truth. A deep, resonant voice spoke over black screen. You tried to contain us. You tried to starve our science, cripple our drive, and bury our future under your fear. But you failed. We are not conquerors, but we will not be caged. If you enter our space again, you will not return. And if you strike first, we will end you before your scream leaves your throat. Then, just silence. and a symbol burned into every transmission screen. The Terran crest now flanked by 2 stars, marking the Vanguard and the Blackbird. 2 ships, 2 warnings, 2 promises. In a hidden sector of deep space, the Eclipse Armada began its slow, deliberate path toward Terran space. Each ship was 3 times the size of Earth's largest cruiser, bristling with weapons, sensors, and artificial intelligence designed for planetary lockdown. They would arrive in 27 hours, and the clock was ticking. The Eclipse Armada moved like a storm through folded space, silent, vast, and terrifying. 79 ships, each one a fortress of ancient war design, powered by the Council's oldest war tech. Entire civilizations had been subjugated under the shadow of this fleet. It wasn't built for battle, it was built for submission, and now it was aimed at Earth. The Terran Defense Network tracked it the moment the first ship folded into detectable subspace layers. Godhook's relay core, buried beneath the South Pacific, pulsed once, then activated its tether systems. Reeve stood inside Earth's strategic command center, jaw tight, fingers locked behind his back. Deke and Lennox were beside him, neither speaking. This was it, the line they couldn't uncross, the moment Earth either became a true power or a smoking lesson in ambition. "How far out?" Reeve asked. 17 hours before they breach our outer grid, Deke replied. First wave includes 5 Dreadnought-class warships. The rest are staggered behind. "They're still hiding their queen," Lennox said. "The fleet's too ordered. They've got something bigger in the rear." Reeve nodded slowly. "Doesn't matter. Godhook doesn't care about size." He turned to Lennox. "Is it charged?" Lennox hesitated. "It's charged. But once we activate the primary pulse, they'll know what it is. We only get 1 full spectrum use before they change their folding patterns." Reeve walked to the control console, placed his hand on the cold titanium edge. "Then let's make the first shot count." Inside the Godhook chamber, located 10 kilometers beneath the sea floor, the final sequence initiated. Red lights flashed along the circular rails of the core. Massive coil structures rotated into alignment, humming louder than any natural sound on Earth. The chamber wasn't a weapon platform in the traditional sense. There were no guns, no bombs. It was gravity. Pure, engineered, subspace-manipulated gravity that reached out like invisible hands into fold space and ripped. The target was simple: Eclipse Unit Number 17, codenamed Celestial Fang, a Sarnathi flagship armed with quantum mesh shielding and rotating subspace decoy cores. Normally untouchable. Normally untraceable. But Godhook didn't trace. It felt 16 hours out from Earth. Celestial Fang trembled. Not physically, but the ship's core trembled. Its jump sync began to drift. At first, the crew thought it was turbulence, routine phase noise, a minor sync decay, easily corrected. But the correction protocols failed. Then the stabilizer failed. Then the ship's quantum mass began to stretch, as if something had grabbed it by the throat from a reality not meant to be touched. Inside the command deck, the Sarnathi fleet commander barked for emergency sync disengage. But it was too late. Godhook pulsed. Fold space split. And Celestial Fang was yanked mid-jump, ripped from its corridor and dumped into real space 4.6 light-years off course. The ship hit normal space like a meteor colliding with solid matter. The front of the vessel collapsed. Hull plating shattered. Core containment ruptured. Then the final insult. An FTL implosion warhead, carried by Earth's Wraith Drone 9, detonated inside the subspace wake left by the ship's forced exit. It folded the wreckage into nothing. One moment, a ship with 3,000 crew. The next, gone, deleted from the sky. Reeve watched the playback without blinking. No celebration. no cheering. Just silence. "That's one," he said. Deke muttered, "The fleet will notice." They already have. Because the rest of the Eclipse Armada had stopped. The fleet's advance ground to a halt, thousands of kilometers short of Terran space. Confusion rippled across their channels, silent questions with no clear answers. Then the Varnai flagship, Ruthless Origin, issued the fleet-wide broadcast. "One of ours has vanished. The humans did not fire. They reached. Change formation. Engage cloak. Prepare for non-linear attack." It was the first time in centuries that the Eclipse fleet had altered course mid-engagement. It was the first time they felt fear. On Earth, Lennox ran calculations as Godhook began its cool-down phase. "That took more out of the lattice coils than expected," he said, frowning. "We've got a 12-hour cycle before we can use it at full power again." "Could we go partial?" Deke asked. "For pulls, yes. For destruction? Number, we need full charge." Reeves stared at the star map. The rest of the fleet was still out there, dangerously close, still capable of glassing a city in seconds. "We just made them bleed," Reeves said. "Now they're going to retaliate." "Then we hold the line," Lennox replied. "No," Reeves said. "We move the line." He stepped forward and keyed the holomap. "We're not waiting for them to finish their plan. We pick the next target. We jump into the edge of their formation and remind them they're not the only ones who can reach." Deke raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we engage a dreadnought with a prototype stealth fleet?" "I'm not suggesting it. I'm ordering it." 3 Terran stealth ships, Shade, Javelin, and Crucible, jumped at staggered intervals, coordinated through quantum-paired drives so precise they arrived a fraction of a second apart inside the outer shell of the Eclipse formation. Each carried a new payload, the FTL Scatter Spike, a weapon designed not to destroy ships, but to shatter their ability to jump. A bomb that didn't explode, but instead sprayed folded tachyon shards that contaminated local subspace fields for hours. When the 3 ships jumped into formation, the Council fleet didn't have time to react. The scatter spikes detonated across a 9,000-kilometer radius. Instantly, 7 dreadnoughts lost jump capability. Their fold space drives shut down, stuck in reprocessing loops. Panic filled the fleet. The humans didn't fire another shot. They just jumped out. Gone. Council command descended into chaos. "What do you mean they entered formation space without detection?" shouted the Qatari admiral. "They're using undetectable sync folds," replied the Varnai tactician. "Something in their tech negates our phase sensors." "And the spikes?" the Ilari asked. "We can't even move our ships now. We're sitting ducks." "Then we fall back," said the Valtari delegate coldly. "No," snapped the speaker. "We finish this." "You do not finish war with pride," the Valtari hissed. "You finish it with survival." But it was too late, because a new signal came through, encrypted but readable on all major frequencies. It was Reeve, live, broadcasted. His face filled every screen on every ship. He wasn't smiling. "I don't want to rule," he said. "I don't want your territory. I don't want your resources. I don't care about your traditions. I care about Earth. I care about my people. I care that we spent 100 years watching you carve up the stars while we bled and begged for scraps. But we don't beg anymore." He leaned closer. "We gave you a warning. Now we've shown you what we're capable of. Don't mistake our silence for fear. We've learned from you. We've watched your wars, your betrayals, your false alliances. We've seen how this ends. But not this time. Because if you come for us again, if you even think about striking our ground, we will not hold back. We will tear your fleets out of the sky. We will unwrite your history. And we will never stop." The signal cut. Inside Ruthless Origin, the Varnai admiral turned to his war council. "They're bluffing," one general said. "No," the Admiral replied, voice quiet. "They're becoming." Godhook began its recharge. The entire Terran Defense Force was mobilized. Civilian evacuation drills quietly began across the Mars colonies. Earth's allied colonies in Alpha Centauri and Kepler-9 began sending encrypted pledges of loyalty. Because even in exile, humanity had allies. And more than that, humanity had momentum. The Council was bleeding. Not from bombed cities or lost planets, but from something worse. Control. They were losing it, every day, every hour, and not just militarily, politically, economically, spiritually. Member races who once bent the knee at every decree were going quiet, distancing themselves. Delegates who once spoke with unified voices now whispered conflicting doubts. The ancient balance that kept peace through fear and hierarchy was cracking. And at the center of that fracture was Earth. A species barely 200 years into interstellar travel had done what empires failed to do in millennia. They broke the illusion. The illusion that the Council was unchallenged. The illusion that time equals superiority. The illusion that obedience means peace. And now, that illusion was shattering faster than the stars themselves. Inside the floating citadel of Varnai High Command, the Council's most ruthless operative, Ter Kal Val, stood before a holographic interface with 4 blinking nodes. She was called the Widow Star in hushed tones, not because of romance, but because every planet she visited eventually lost something it loved. She didn't deal in fleets. She dealt in extinctions. 3 scatter strikes, she said coldly, pointing at the mapped impact zones. 1 gravity fold extraction, 2 surgical deletions, and Godhook has recharged. They can now neutralize any ship they target within 27 seconds of arrival. A reptilian general beside her clicked his teeth. Then we strike first, hit their surface, break their morale. You saw what Earth did when cornered, collapse them from the inside. But Val wasn't looking at Earth anymore. She was looking at the stars behind it. "No," she said softly. "We find what gave them the idea." "What?" Val turned, her black eyes like obsidian shards. "You think a primitive species just invented fold gravity extraction? You think humans, with their underdeveloped subspace tech and emotional instincts, cracked the one barrier that's held for eons?" She stepped closer to the general. "They found it." That silenced the room. Val tapped the final node. It expanded into a star system none of them had visited for over 2,000 years. "System 993, forgotten by most, but not by us." There it was. The Hollow Bastion. A failed Council experiment buried in deep space-time distortion. Once a secret, now a myth. But Val knew it was real. The humans had stumbled across something ancient. And that was the real threat. On Earth, Reeve stared at the decrypted message from his Outer Rim spy network. His chest tightened. Ter Kal Val has mobilized. Target unknown. Direction vector. Outer Dark. He hadn't heard that name in years. Not since his Black Ops days. Not since the Breach Colony incident, where every man, woman, and child in the system was erased, without a single shot fired. Reeve had seen the aftermath. People turned to ash mid-step, machinery frozen in half-function. No fires, no struggle, just silence, and the mark of one thing. Tire. "She's on the move," he muttered. Lennox looked up from the Godhook console. "Who?" Reeve handed him the slate. Lennox read the name, and his face changed. "I thought she was just a spook story." "She's real," Reeve said, "and if she's headed for the Outer Dark, that means one thing. She knows where this started." Lennox looked hard at him. "Reeve, what did we find out there?" Reeve didn't answer right away. His hand brushed over a scar on his wrist, faded now but deep. I'll tell you what I never put in the reports. 15 years ago, Reeve was just a reconnaissance captain in Earth's early exploration initiative. He was assigned to an unmarked system past the Sagittarius boundary, a forgotten zone marked unstable and avoided by even rogue traders. That's where he found it. A derelict satellite, ancient but functional, broadcasting in a non-terrestrial quantum pulse. No language, just equations. Layers of space-time data compressed in a format no known species used. He brought it back against protocol, handed it off to a fringe physicist, Lennox, then a dropout no one listened to, and went silent. 2 years later, Lennox submitted the prototype FTL frame that would become the foundation of the Odyssey. But what Rive didn't say, what he buried even from Earth Command, was what the satellite also contained. A warning. Not words, but images, simulated subspace reactions, core detonations, reactions that looked terrifyingly like Godhook. It wasn't just research, it was containment. The thing had been built to lock something in, not let something out, and they'd copied it, improved it, weaponized it. Reeve looked at Lennox, voice low. If she finds the Bastion first, she'll do what we haven't dared. Wake it up. Lennox's face was pale. Then we stop her. The mission was codenamed Nightglass. No fleet, no big show of power. Just one Terran deep-jump stealth corvette, Erebus, with a crew of 30, hand-picked by Reeve himself. Deke volunteered to command the mission. I don't want a front-row seat when Earth gets glassed if we screw this up, he said with a grin. I'd rather be where the bullet comes from. The jump would take them 23 light-years into unregulated deep space. No relays, no support. Just raw FTL. Erebus was the only ship fast enough and silent enough to make the trip undetected. Inside, Reeve handed Deke the black file, Project YX-993. Deke flipped it open and saw the last image from the derelict satellite. A hollow structure the size of a moon, floating in a void pocket, pulsing like a dying star. What is that? He asked. We don't know, Reeve said, but the Council once tried to harness it. They failed, sealed it, left it to rot. And we unlocked it? Reeve nodded grimly, without knowing. Deke closed the file. Then we lock it back up. Erebus made the jump in 19 hours, slicing through reality so thinly even Godhook couldn't track it. When they reached the 993 system, the readings went haywire. Subspace lattice values were off. Gravity fields were fluctuating in fractions of a second. Temporal drift was measurable, meaning time itself was unstable. And there it was. The Bastion, a massive metallic sphere, scarred by ancient wars, cracked in half, but still pulsing with something not even Lennox could define. Not heat, not power, will, and next to it, a ship, sleek, black, silent, Council tech. Ter Calval had arrived first. Inside the Bastion's husk, Deke led a squad through the broken interior. They passed structures that made no sense, non-Euclidean corridors that curved into themselves, doors with no walls, lights that flickered in colors no spectrum should allow. Then they found it. A chamber of light. A console still active, still cycling the original data. And in the center, a cube of folded space-time, stabilized by a gravity shell. Whatever it was, it pulsed in sync with the Godhook frequency. We stole this, Deke whispered. Then Val stepped from the shadows, her weapon raised. You didn't steal it, she said. You freed it. The standoff lasted 7 seconds. Then a Council shock trooper fired. Deke's second-in-command returned fire. The chamber erupted. Bullets, plasma, screams, ricochets. Deke dove for the cube, hands scrambling to disable the gravity lock. Val lunged, blade in hand. She was fast. Too fast, but not faster than Deke's shot. It hit her shoulder, spun her sideways. She screamed and vanished into a smoke field. The cube's shell collapsed. The pulsing slowed. And then, quiet. Just quiet. Deke stared at it, breath heaving. Whatever it was asleep again. But for how long? Back on Earth, Reeve received the signal. Bastion stabilized. Target neutralized. Recommend total system quarantine. Lennox read the second message and looked at Reeve. It was a mistake, he said softly. All of it. We didn't build Godhook. We resurrected it. Reeve nodded slowly. But now we use it to protect, not dominate. Lennox looked at him. You sure? Reeve turned to the star map again. No, he said. But I'm sure of one thing. If they come again, God won't save them. The council had gone silent. Not a strategic retreat, not diplomacy. Silence. After the Bastion transmission reached their inner ring, the Eclipse Armada began folding back, ship by ship, silently peeling away from Terran space like wolves, sensing a larger predator in the dark. Earth's orbital sensors logged their trajectories. They weren't heading home. They were heading to System 9939. To study it, to contain it, to pray it stayed dead. Inside the Earth Strategic Command bunker, Reeve stood at the edge of the holotable, watching their exit. No declaration, Deke said, stepping into the room. No apology, not even a bluff. They're shaken, Lennox muttered. No, Reeve said without looking away. They're thinking, recalculating the game. Lennox turned. You think it's over? Reeve leaned on the table, knuckles white. No. It's just changed. Earth was different now. The silence of space wasn't peaceful. It was suspicious. Every satellite, every listening post, every jump trace was triple analyzed. Trust was gone. But in its place, something stronger had taken root. Fear and respect. Within the first week of the Council withdrawal, 27 minor races sent private communiques to Earth. Not threats, not ultimatums, offers, trade, technology transit sharing, all unofficial, all deniable. But every one of them driven by the same realization. The old power was fragile, and the new one didn't ask for permission. In the orbit of Mars, Vanguard floated like a symbol of Earth's rebirth. Repaired, rearmed, and now upgraded with a stabilized secondary Godhook pulse array, it stood as the flagship of the Terran Autonomous Defense Network. Reeve stepped aboard, boots echoing in the long corridor. Every crewman snapped to attention, not out of military code, but because of what he represented. He'd become something more than a commander. A line between the past and future. A man who didn't just survive history. He changed it. In the war room, Deke handed him a report. The Traskian border colonies just sent us a formal inquiry, he said. They want Earth to mediate their trade dispute with the Qatari. Reeve raised an eyebrow. Us? They want a third party not aligned with the Council. Lennox grinned from across the table. Guess we're independent enough now to make friends. Reeve flipped the data slate shut. They're not looking for friends. They're hedging their bets. This isn't a trade dispute. It's the start of a new axis. Later that night, Reeve stood alone on the Vanguard's observation deck, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them. The blue marble. Still bruised, still scarred, but alive. The door opened behind him. Lennox stepped through slower than usual. I should have seen it earlier, he said quietly. Seen what? That we weren't just fighting to be accepted. We were fighting to be feared. Reeve didn't speak. Lennox continued. They won't come again, not now, not until they've figured out what the Bastion really was. But they will come, one way or another. Reeve finally spoke, voice low. Then we'll be ready. Lennox looked down. I made something, he said after a pause. Reeve turned. What kind of something? Lennox hesitated. Then he handed over a small chip drive. It's a simulation, not executable. Not yet. But it's a theory for Godhook-level spatial suspension, something that could pause a system's physics for several seconds. Reeve stared at it. You built a way to stop time? No, Lennox said. Just delay reality. Reeve pocketed the drive. Let's hope we never need it. Elsewhere in the galaxy, inside the secret chambers of the Council's core ring, the speaker met privately with 4 of the remaining high delegates. Their voices were hushed, cold. They've disrupted the balance. They've unlocked weapons we sealed for a reason. They've infected younger races with rebellion. The speaker held up a trembling hand. They've exposed our weakness, but they've also revealed our flaw. Which is? We built peace through fear and left no room for evolution. The room was silent. So what now? The Valtari asked. The speaker paused, long and slow. Now, we adapt. 3 weeks later, Earth received an encrypted diplomatic packet. Not public, not official. Inside, a proposed protocol. Not a treaty, not an alliance, a new system, a shadow organization, one where all powers, old and new, could contribute to regulating advanced subspace technologies. A council of consequence, built not on old laws, but mutual deterrence. It was unsigned, unstamped, but it bore one unmistakable identifier. The data signal used only once before, by the council speaker. Reeve read it twice, then 3 more times. Deke and Lennox sat across from him, watching. They're offering us a seat, Deke said. No, Reeve replied. They're offering us a mirror. Lennox frowned. Meaning? Reeve looked up. They're trying to make sure no one ever does to them what we just did. Deke smirked. Smart bastards. Reeve placed the tablet down. Question is, do we say yes? Later that night, Reeve stepped into the personal comms chamber, alone, and activated a restricted channel. The face that appeared was old, weathered, female, stern. General Ava Stroud, Earth's first fleet marshal, officially retired. Unofficially, still holding the last override key to Earth's orbital defense network. I heard the Council slithering back, she said dryly. They are, Reeve confirmed. You going to let them in the door? Reeve hesitated. Maybe. Stroud studied him. Do it, she said finally, but don't let them forget who opened it. He nodded slowly. Understood. The first summit took place on neutral ground, not on Earth, not in Council space, but above the dead system of Charon 6. No planets, no resources, just debris. And history. It was a message in itself. A reminder of what happens when diplomacy fails. Reeve arrived aboard Vanguard, flanked by Earth's 3 newest stealth escort ships, Fortune, Nomad, and Quiet Hammer. They didn't enter the meeting armed, but they didn't arrive unguarded either. The council delegation included the speaker, 2 Valtari, 1 Ilari, and, unexpectedly, a young envoy from the Traskians. The first minutes were stiff, hollow phrases, carefully worded greetings. Then Reeve spoke first. No more illusions. The speaker nodded. Agreed. This isn't about peace, Reeve continued. It's about respect. We won't kneel, we won't beg, and we won't ever again wait to be allowed to advance. The speaker met his eyes. Nor will we expect you to. 2 hours later, the document was signed. The Protocol of Equilibrium. A loose pact, not of laws, but of threats. Each signatory retained sovereign control of its space and tech. But the agreement required mutual monitoring of any fold gravity manipulation beyond civilian use. Violators would be subject to joint action, not unity, but parity. Reeve didn't smile when he signed it. Neither did the speaker. but both understood. War hadn't ended. It had evolved. As Reeve returned to the Vanguard, Lennox met him at the airlock. "It's done," Lennox said. "For now," Reeve replied. "What now?" Reeve looked out the viewport. "Now we watch. We build. We remember." "Think they'll try again?" Reeve didn't answer. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out Lennox's chip, the one that could pause reality itself. He handed it back. "Save it," he said. "We may still need it." 1 week later, deep in the ruins of System 9939, a forgotten drone, the size of a grain of sand, broke loose from the Bastion's remains and pinged out a message across folded space. The message didn't go to Earth. It didn't go to the Council. It went beyond the map. And somewhere, something answered. But that's another story.